Confession: I'm confused about my dorm mate, and I don't know what to do. So, I, 19F, have been living in the dorms for a few months now, and there's this girl, let's call her Lena, 20F, who I've become pretty close with. We don't just share the same building, but we also have a lot of classes together, and I genuinely enjoy her company. She's funny, smart, and kind, and we've been hanging out a lot lately. Honestly, when I think about how I feel toward her, it's kind of hard to put it all into words, but I'll try my best to explain. At first, I thought it was just the natural closeness that comes from being dorm mates. We would talk about everything: our classes, random late-night thoughts, our favorite Netflix shows, and everything in between. But the more time I spent with Lena, the more I started noticing little things that I didn't quite understand. Her laugh is contagious, and I've caught myself laughing harder than I usually would at things that probably weren't even that funny. But with Lena, everything just feels so effortless and lighthearted. The problem is that, over time, I've started feeling this attraction toward her. And it's not just a "she's really pretty" kind of thing. No, it's much more than that. I've caught myself daydreaming about her, and it's way more intense than anything I've ever felt for a friend. Sometimes, when she gets close to me, I feel this nervous energy, like butterflies, but more than that, it's like I can feel my heart race a little too fast. I'll notice the way her smile lights up the room or how she smells when she passes by, and I just want to be closer to her. It's like something inside me is drawn to her in a way that's deeper than friendship, but at the same time, I can't quite figure out what that means for me. I keep wondering if she might feel the same way. There have been moments where I think I see signs, but then I second-guess myself. For example, there are times when she'll find excuses to sit next to me, even when there's plenty of other space. Or she'll linger just a little longer when we're talking, and it feels like there's a spark in the air. Sometimes, it's in the way she looks at me, like there's something more in her gaze than just friendship. But then, I catch myself and think, am I just imagining this? Maybe I'm just projecting what I want to happen, and she's just being friendly, right? It's been hard to make sense of my feelings. I don't want to label anything too quickly, because I'm still figuring it out myself. But there's this part of me that can't ignore how much I care about her, in a way that feels different from how I care about other friends. And as much as I try to dismiss these feelings, they just keep creeping up on me. What's confusing me even more is that Lena has been incredibly open with me about her life. She's talked about her past relationships, both with guys and girls, and how she's always been kind of fluid when it comes to attraction. It's made me wonder whether she might feel something for me, too. But there's this nagging thought in the back of my head: maybe she doesn't see me like that at all. Maybe she just sees me as her best friend, and I'm overthinking everything. And there's the issue of what happens next. If I tell her how I feel, I could risk ruining our friendship, and that's something I'm not sure I'm ready to risk. I mean, we live in the same dorm, and we spend almost all our free time together. If she doesn't feel the same way, things could get weird between us, and that would be awful. It's hard enough trying to keep these feelings hidden from her. There are times when I feel like I'm on the verge of saying something, but then I stop myself, afraid of crossing a line I might not be able to uncross. But at the same time, I feel like I can't ignore it anymore. It's getting harder to hide from myself, and every time I see her smile or hear her voice, I feel something deep inside me wanting to be closer to her. I don't even know what closer means, whether it's just more time together or something deeper, something more intimate. All I know is that these feelings are real, and I can't pretend they don't exist. The other thing that's been on my mind is that we're in college, and relationships can be complicated enough without adding the dorm mate dynamic into the mix. The last thing I want is to make things uncomfortable between us, especially since we have to live together. I don't want to risk losing her as a friend or making our living situation awkward. But the longer I keep these feelings to myself, the more I start to feel like I'm hiding from the truth. So, I guess my question is, should I try to talk to her about this and risk the potential weirdness, or should I just keep these feelings to myself and let them fade over time? Maybe it's better to let it go, but I don't know if I'm strong enough to do that. I don't even know if I'm ready to label anything. I'm still figuring myself out, and I don't want to force something that isn't meant to be. But at the same time, I can't just ignore what's happening inside me. I've never been in a situation like this before, so I'd really appreciate any advice. Has anyone been in a similar situation? Should I go for it, or just back off and try to suppress these feelings? What do I do now? I don't want to make a mistake that could cost me our friendship, but I also don't want to live with this confusion hanging over me.
I'm attracted to my older neighbor and I'm wondering if it's too risky to take it to the next level. Okay, here it goes. This is a bit awkward for me, but I feel like I really need to talk about this because I've been thinking about it way too much, and I can't figure out what the right move is. So, I, 25, M, have this neighbor, 38, F, who, honestly, is just stunning. At first, I didn't really think much about her, but over the past few months, I've started to notice how attractive and charismatic she is, and now it's all I can think about. I've lived in this apartment building for about 2 years, and during that time, I'd see her every now and then, but it was just the usual neighborly exchanges. You know, hey, how's it going, when we run into each other in the hall, or maybe a brief chat when we're both outside doing laundry. Nothing special, but at some point, I began paying way more attention to her. I'm not sure when exactly it started, but there's something about the way she carries herself that's completely magnetic. I think it's the way she's so confident in her own skin, how she speaks with such authority but also warmth. She's super independent, and there's this subtle yet undeniable elegance about her. Lately, though, I've been realizing I have some pretty serious feelings for her. It's not just a simple, she's attractive thing anymore. I'm genuinely drawn to her. And I don't know if I'm being weird or if this is just me, but I've started to flirt with her. I'm not even sure how it happened at first. It just kind of slipped out. I've been throwing in a little playful comment here or there, teasing her a bit, and I've noticed she responds in ways that I never really expected. She laughs at my jokes more than I would have thought, gives me these lingering smiles, and there's been a couple of times where she's touched my arm when we're talking. Nothing major, just little things that make my heart race. But here's the problem. I can't tell if I'm overthinking it, or if she's actually interested too. Maybe I'm reading into her reactions too much. Is she just being polite? Or is she flirting back? I've thought about asking her out, or even just taking the next step and seeing if there's potential for something more, but I can't shake this overwhelming feeling of uncertainty. There's also the age difference. She's 38, and I'm 25, and I can't help but wonder if that's something she'd even be interested in. I mean, I'm definitely a little younger, and I know that can sometimes be a big factor when it comes to dating, especially if someone's had more life experience or already has a solid idea of what they want out of a relationship. On top of that, I keep thinking about the what if it doesn't work out scenario. We live in the same building, and I'd really hate to make things awkward if she's not feeling the same way or if things go sideways. I value our neighborly relationship a lot, and the last thing I want is for things to get uncomfortable. It'd be kind of hard to avoid each other, right? Especially since we both have pretty similar schedules. The more I think about it, the more complicated it seems. Like, what if we try something and then things go weird? Or worse, what if she sees me as just a nice guy and not someone she's romantically interested in? But at the same time, when I see her, I can't help but feel this pull. I'm so drawn to her, and it feels like there's this potential for something. I catch myself daydreaming about what it would be like to go out with her, spend time together outside of just neighbor stuff. The excitement is there, but so is the anxiety. I mean, I've never really been in a situation like this before where I'm unsure about how to move forward, so I'm just left wondering if it's worth the risk. I guess what I'm asking is, do I just go for it? Is it worth taking the chance and seeing where things might go? Or am I totally overthinking this, and it's better to just let things stay as they are? I don't want to mess up a good thing by getting too bold too quickly, but at the same time, I feel like I need to know if there's something more here or if I should just back off and not risk making things awkward. I'm really torn, and I'd love to hear if anyone's been in a similar situation. How did you handle it? Did you take the leap, or did you let the opportunity slip by? Any advice or thoughts would be greatly appreciated, because at this point, I'm honestly stuck. Update. Well, that was awkward. And it didn't go the way I hoped. Alright, here it goes. Time to update you all on my embarrassing attempt to ask out my older neighbor, 38F. First off, thanks to everyone who gave me advice when I posted last time. I really appreciated the support, and I thought I was mentally prepared for whatever might happen. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. So, I worked up the courage, planned out what I was going to say, and decided to go for it. I mean, how bad could it be, right? Worst case scenario, she says no, and I just move on. Easy enough. Well, let me tell you, nothing about this went the way I thought it would. I ran into her in the hallway a couple of weeks ago. I'd been psyching myself up for this moment for days, trying to find the perfect casual way to ask her out without making things weird. It was all going fine, until the words actually left my mouth. I asked if she wanted to grab coffee sometime, just as a friendly thing, no pressure. I tried to keep it lighthearted, and even cracked a joke to ease the tension. But the second I asked, the world stopped. There was a long pause. I could see her brain trying to catch up with what I'd just said, and, Omen, did it feel like an eternity? And then came the response. She gave me this tight, awkward smile and said, "Oh, you're sweet, but I'm not really looking for anything right now." I'm sure she meant it to be kind, but let me tell you, those words sank. Like, I could physically feel the embarrassment wash over me. She followed it up with, "I really enjoy our chats, though. You're a great neighbor." But in my head, all I heard was, "Please, don't make things weird." I mean, what do you even say to that? I tried to laugh it off, like it didn't sting. I said something like, "Yeah, no worries. Totally understand," and gave a weird half-wave as I shuffled off. But inside, I was screaming. I felt like I had just stepped into a dumpster fire of awkwardness. I'm sure I looked like an idiot standing there, probably blushing like a tomato. To make matters worse, since that moment, I've had to face her a few more times. You know, the usual neighborly encounters. "Hey, how's it going? Oh, you're home late tonight." And it's just, ugh, so uncomfortable. It's not like she's being cold or anything, but I can tell there's this weird air between us now. Like, we've got this invisible barrier that wasn't there before. The vibe has definitely shifted. I'm not even sure if she feels bad about it. I think she's just trying to be nice and not make me feel worse, but it's making me feel even more awkward. I want to keep things friendly, but part of me is like, how do I act normal now? I can't stop second-guessing every interaction. Am I coming off too weird? Does she think I'm a creep now? Ugh. But you know what? I guess this was a learning experience. For one, I'm glad I took the risk, even if it was super embarrassing. At least now I know for sure that she's not into me, and I don't have to keep imagining these what-if scenarios. Secondly, I've decided to try to not let this crush linger any longer. I'll still talk to her, because we're neighbors, after all, but I think it's time I just let it go and focus on moving on. So yeah, not the fairy tale I hoped for. I definitely won't be making any more moves like that again, especially not with someone I'll have to see every day. But I'm thankful for the advice, and to anyone else who might find themselves in a similar situation, just know that asking someone out can be really awkward. And if it doesn't go well, it's not the end of the world. It's just awkward for a bit.
That time I had a massive crush on my teacher, and ended up hooking up with her years later. Okay, so, I'm not exactly proud of this story, but I have to admit, it was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. Here's what happened. Back in high school, I had this huge crush on one of my teachers. Let's call her Ms. Taylor, definitely not her real name. She was in her mid-30s, super smart, always well put together, and had this infectious passion for history that made her class feel more like a movie than a lecture. Honestly, I was completely enamored with her. She was the kind of person you couldn't help but admire, intelligent, confident, and, yeah, ridiculously attractive. And yes, I'm aware this sounds like a cliché teenage fantasy, but it was real for me. I mean, who hasn't had a crush on a teacher at some point? But, of course, I kept it to myself. There was no way I could ever act on it. It's not like you can just walk up to your teacher and confess your feelings. Plus, I was just a teenager and didn't know what to do with those kinds of emotions. My friends knew about my crush, mostly because I couldn't help but gush every time she called on me or smiled at me, and they'd tease me relentlessly. I'd just laugh it off and pretend I wasn't completely obsessed with her, but deep down, I kind of was. Then I graduated, and like most people, I moved on with my life. I went to college, had a few relationships, made new friends, and honestly, I eventually stopped thinking about Ms. Taylor. She was a distant memory in the whirlwind of college life. I moved to a different city for work, and after a while, I forgot about her, until one night, years later, when the universe had other plans. So here's where it gets interesting. I found myself back in my hometown on a business trip. I had a free night, and I ended up at a bar with some old high school friends, just catching up and reminiscing about the good old days. Everything was going pretty normally until I spotted her. Ms. Taylor. She was sitting at the bar, sipping a drink, looking as beautiful as ever. Time had been kind to her. If anything, she looked even better than I remembered. I froze for a moment, just staring at her, almost forgetting how to breathe. My friends, of course, immediately noticed and started nudging me. Dude, is that Ms. Taylor? The teacher you were totally obsessed with back in high school? I couldn't even reply. I was in shock. But they weren't going to let me off the hook that easily. You have to talk to her. You've got to go say hi, they urged. I mean, she was sitting there, just casually sipping her drink, looking like nothing had changed. And I had no excuse. I was an adult now, right? Surely, this would be a funny story to tell someday. So, after a couple of drinks and a bit of liquid courage, I walked up to her. When I finally got close, I almost forgot how to talk. But then she looked up and smiled at me. That smile. That same, warm, comforting smile she used to give me in class. It completely disarmed me. I stammered out something along the lines of, Ms. Taylor, hi, it's been a while. She looked at me, then did a double take. Oh my God. I remember you. You were in my history class, right? You were one of my best students. How have you been? We started chatting. She was still teaching, still passionate about history, and still as intelligent and captivating as I remembered. We talked about life, what had changed, what hadn't, and I couldn't help but notice the shift in the air between us. It was subtle at first, just a little spark in her eyes when she looked at me. But as the conversation went on, that spark grew. The way she looked at me was different. The lines of teacher and student that had existed in my teenage mind started to blur. And then, when she casually brushed her hand against mine, I knew something was about to happen. The attraction was mutual, and it was impossible to ignore. She suggested we go somewhere quieter to continue our conversation, and, honestly, I wasn't about to say no. So we left the bar together, walking to a nearby hotel. Don't ask how we ended up there, long story, but we found ourselves in a private room in no time. What happened next? Well, it was a whirlwind. It felt like everything I had ever imagined as a teenager but never thought would happen was happening right in front of me. And let me tell you, it was intense. It wasn't just a physical thing, it was emotional too. It felt like we were both revisiting an old fantasy, except now we were free from the walls of the classroom. The teacher-student dynamic was long gone, and we were just two adults connecting in a way neither of us had ever expected. The morning after, I woke up, feeling a mix of emotions. We were both a little awkward, but we didn't make it weird. She was still her confident self, and I was just trying to process what had just happened. We exchanged numbers, said we should catch up again sometime, and then I left. And I haven't heard from her since. To be honest, I didn't expect anything more. It wasn't like we had some deep emotional connection that would lead to anything serious. It was a one-off thing, a strange twist of fate where my teenage crush somehow came to life. And while part of me feels proud that I had this wild experience, there's also a little voice in my head telling me that I should feel guilty. I mean, she was my teacher. That's a weird line to cross, even if it was years after graduation. But I guess that's just how life goes sometimes. You revisit old dreams, and sometimes, they're not as perfect as you imagine them to be. But in this case, it was definitely an unforgettable experience. Anyway, I had to get this off my chest. Anyone else had a crazy encounter with someone from their past years later? What happened to you? Update. So I've been sitting on this for a while, but I figured I'd give you all an update after a pretty unexpected turn of events. I still can't quite believe it, honestly, but here we go. If you remember my original post, I talked about meeting my former teacher, Ms. Taylor, years after high school and, well, let's just say I didn't expect what happened next. But life, as it turns out, is full of surprises. So, after that night, where we reconnected and shared an intense, whirlwind moment together, things felt, well, a little complicated. We exchanged numbers and promised to catch up again sometime, but then, crickets. Nothing. I didn't hear from her, and honestly, I wasn't surprised. It felt like a one-off thing, and I chalked it up to being a weird, but exciting, chapter in my life. I wasn't expecting anything more. But here's where it gets interesting. A couple of weeks ago, out of the blue, I get a message from Ms. Taylor. She simply says, "Hey, it's been a while. I was wondering if you'd be up for catching up sometime soon." Of course, I didn't need to be asked twice. I replied right away, and we made plans to meet up. I had no idea what to expect. I honestly thought it might just be a friendly catch-up, but, as you can guess, that wasn't quite what happened. We met up at a cafe, and the moment she walked in, I felt it again, this electric pull. She still looked so hot, even more sexy than before, and it was like time hadn't passed at all. We talked for hours, about life, about how things had changed, but also about that night we shared. She was surprisingly candid about it. She told me that, even though it had been unexpected for her, she had felt a connection that she couldn't ignore. It was clear we both remembered that night vividly, and that unspoken tension that had started brewing between us months ago? Yeah, it was still there. We joked about how strange it was, considering she had once been my teacher, but there was an undeniable chemistry that neither of us could deny. And, naturally, the conversation slowly shifted to something more intimate. She mentioned that she'd been thinking about me a lot lately and wanted to see where things could go. To say I was nervous is an understatement, but at the same time, I couldn't help the excitement bubbling up inside of me. We ended up walking through a nearby park, just talking and laughing, and before I knew it, we were standing near a secluded spot where the tension between us was almost unbearable. She looked at me, and without another word, we kissed. And, well, let's just say that things escalated very quickly from there. We ended up at her place. It wasn't planned, it wasn't something I expected, but we both got so hot, we couldn't help it. And once again, the boundaries between teacher and student, the past and the present, just seemed to disappear. This woman was crazy in bed, like holy crap. She turns me into a caveman when we're together, Elle. The morning after wasn't nearly as awkward as I thought it would be. We both knew what we were doing, and we had no intention of turning it into anything more than it was. She was still the same confident, intelligent, and captivating woman I remembered. And while I wasn't expecting some grand love story, I did feel like something shifted between us. Maybe it was the fact that we were finally honest about our feelings, maybe it was just the freedom of exploring something that had always been just out of reach. Afterward, we agreed to keep in touch, and while I'm not sure what the future holds, there's definitely a part of me that's glad we did this. That night we shared all those years ago was something I never expected, and it turned out that, somehow, it wasn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't a perfect fantasy, but it was real. And it's something I'll always look back on as a reminder that life has a funny way of giving you a second chance at things you thought were long gone. So yeah, that's my update. I'm not sure where this will go from here, but I'll let you know if anything else happens. It's been a crazy ride, and I have no idea where it'll lead, but I can't say I'm disappointed. Anyway, just wanted to share. Thanks for all the support and for hearing me out. Anyone else had something come full circle like this? Let me know.